Hey, so it's a Wednesday. I have a gas station coffee in my hand and my life is falling apart. And I'm not saying that to be inflammatory or exaggerational. It quite literally is falling apart, and I wish I were joking, but I'm not, and I need to talk to you about that today. So maybe we can start with why my life is falling apart, or why it feels that way. And in order to do that, I need to tell you first about my tattoo, because the tattoo is not why my life is falling apart, but it triggered a cascading series of thoughts and reflections on my life, what I'm doing with my life, the kind of lifestyle that I've been living in and operating in that allowed me the space to break open, to fall apart, and reflect on all of that and hopefully find a better way to move forward. So yeah, I got a new tattoo. Today is Wednesday, so 5 days ago. It's an ouroboros. I will throw a picture on the screen because I'm not lifting my shirt on camera right now. The ouroboros is a snake eating its own tail. And I've wanted this tattoo for a really long time. I first found it right around this time last year, actually, but I waited on it. I didn't feel like the time was right. I wanted to get it when it felt like it was a significance that mattered to me enough where I needed to have it on my body. And I realized that I wanted to have it on my body on Thanksgiving. When I went to my parents' house for Thanksgiving dinner, I was worried about the emotional triggers that were going to come up just being in that kind of a chaotic environment and how I would react or respond. I talked about this on the video that I made called Confessions of my disordered eating habits or something like that. I have a track record, or something that I struggle with is compulsive overeating or turning to food in times of high emotional stress. I eat my feelings. It's not my proudest or highest use or most adaptive tool in my toolkit, but it's a tool in the toolkit. And when I went home for Thanksgiving, I tried really hard to avoid doing that. And I came home to my apartment where I am right now, and I basically ate everything in my pantry. And after that night, I woke up the next morning and I said, I need the ouroboros now. I'm ready for it now. Because to me, it represents the fact that there's so many different ancient scripts and mythologies where the ouroboros presents itself. It's in Greek mythology. It's in a couple of other series of history as well. But to me, the concept of the snake eating its own tail is that the cycle never stops. You just continually choose the ending, right? There's always a beginning, but then the beginning has a middle and the middle has an ending, but there is no true end. Yeah, so I wanted to get that tattoo because it represented to me, like in the case where I choose to do something that's against my ethics or morals or the person who I aspire to be, who I want to be, it doesn't matter because the next day will be a brand new beginning and I get to choose that beginning. And then those series of choices will lead me to a new quote unquote ending. And it also doesn't matter if I make the choices that I believe are in line with my ethics and my choices, because that's just one day and I need to choose to do the right thing every single day and definitely for the rest of the time that I'm alive. And so it's this concept of there's no winning, there's no besting your cycle, there's no trumping yourself either in a good way or a bad way. All we can do is just try to be the best version of ourselves on the day, every single day, forever. Anyway, so I get this tattoo to acknowledge the fact that there's no winning, right? Which makes the next thing that I'm about to say sound so idiotic, because I finally get this tattoo, right, a few days ago. And immediately, it's like I forgot that there's no winning. There's no outbeating the cycle. Because I made it sort of this goal to just relax into my feelings and to use it as like a signal that I'm not going to overeat again because I have this tattoo. And I know that I need to do my best to avoid making the choices that I don't want to make. I put extra pressure on myself to not do what I know that I already struggle with sometimes. Immediate red flag. I'm not giving myself grace or kindness. And I should have known better, but this is why the tattoo is the trigger for me, because I got home on Friday night. I didn't overeat. I did get halal in the city, and that was really yummy. And I calmed myself down, but I know myself. I know that, especially when it comes to getting tattoos and there being like a physical wound on my body and having a history of sexual trauma, physical trauma, just like body trauma in general, being wounded is triggering for me, or it can be really triggering for me for an intense emotional event. So I knew that this was a possibility, dare I say even a likelihood, and I wanted to avoid it as much as I possibly could. But I couldn't. The mantra that has helped me avoid reaching for that tool in my toolkit recently has been the feeling of needing to binge or compulsively overeat is a feeling of emergency in the body. And so whenever this urge has come up for me in the recent few weeks or months, I remind myself, this is a signal that there's an emergency happening in my body, but there isn't an emergency in my body. And so I'm able to walk away, detach, pull myself into another room and not do that. But that doesn't work in this instance because I have a tattoo on my body. I have a big wound, and he touched up the one on my forearm. So I'm like, I'm covered in bandages and they're sticky and you can't really get comfortable laying down or just sitting right. Like, you feel wounded and you feel like you're not your true self. And so that mantra didn't work because it was like, well, there is an emergency in my body. I'm in a lot of pain. I'm uncomfortable. I'm sore. I just went through a really intense bout. There's a lot of adrenaline draining from my body, and I do need to just rest and reset. And I deserve a comfort meal. And this is where things start to kind of fall apart because I've become so binary with my choices in life that I've just started to associate any meal that doesn't fit in my meal plan or any set of eating tendencies or behavioral tendencies that aren't in alignment with who I believe I should be. I now feel like I'm losing. I feel like I've made the wrong choice. I feel like I've made a wrong choice that now has punishment around it or a negative around it, and there's shame around it. Whereas in reality, somebody would be like, yeah, I went through a hard thing and I just, I deserve a comfort meal. But I make it a shame-based thing, which feeds a negative cycle and makes the whole thing way worse. And that's exactly what happened. And so the tattoo as a trigger wasn't necessarily getting the tattoo. It's the way that my lifestyle has to, in a very temporary way, but over the next few days, has to change in order to allow my tattoo to heal. I'm not going to the gym. I'm not working out. I don't want to get sweat under there. I want my tattoo to fully heal and let the wound do its thing the right way so that I have a beautiful piece on my rib cage and I don't mess with that, right? What started to happen is I've been essentially operating like a robot for the last 3 or 4 months of my life, especially. I've been extraordinarily disciplined. I've been dialed in, like razor's edge, dialed in on every aspect of my life. And now all of a sudden, my routine was falling apart. I'm not going to the gym so that I can let this heal. I go to the gym before work, which means that I usually wake up at 5 a.m. Well, if I'm not going to the gym, I don't need to wake up at 5. I wake up at 5 and I take a cold shower. I'm trying not to take additional showers either with this tattoo because, again, heat, moisture, water, we don't want it to get underneath that bandage. So I decided that I need to just step away from the cold showers for at least a few days while this heals. Yeah, so then it's like, that's all kind of out of loop and out of orbit. And training is, again, I train because I want to train, but there's this thing that I'm noticing now, this pattern that I'm noticing now about myself, which is I'll start a series of things that I want in my life because I want to, because they provide me a sense of pleasure or joy or satisfaction. But somewhere along the way, in this almost OCD-like way, I no longer do the things because I want to. I start to feel like I have to, because I've created a pattern where this is something that's part of my routine, and it's sort of like indoctrinated into my daily life. And then I start to kind of question, like my ego rears up and it says, well, who are you if you decide to not do this? I made it to 71 consecutive days of cold showers, and I love the cold showers, don't get me wrong, but there's almost that like underlying fear of, what happens if tomorrow I wake up and I just stop doing this? Like, does that mean that I failed? Does that make me a weak person? Why wouldn't I do the hard thing? Why wouldn't I wake up at 5? Why wouldn't I try to PR in the gym? Work harder, train harder, work harder at work, because now that makes me feel good. Come home, write, and basically this is why I started to realize like things are falling apart, because I needed to take a rest week this week in some areas, right? Like I said, no cold showers, no gym, just trying to slow down in general. And as soon as I let off the gas, I started to realize how much I've just been pushing myself at redline in like 6 equally challenging and difficult categories of my life without any rest. And I looked back, like as I detached from my routine and my schedule, which I have created like this sense of like, yeah, I love doing this. This is my jam. This is who I am. This is my routine. I love it. I kind of pulled away from it because I had to this week. And I looked around and I was like, wow, my life has become myopically focused in some categories, and I've basically, now that I've detached, been able to assess how pushing myself with this focus in these specific categories has pulled out life energy in all of these other categories kind of around it. And I realized like I haven't been as sociable. I haven't made as much time for my friends, because during the week, I'm not going to make time for my friends anyway, because there's not that much free time. But like on the weekends, I'm like, I got to write, I got to work out, I got to train. I don't want to go on a date. They want to go for brunch. Well, like I usually eat at 1 p.m. now. And if you want to eat brunch at 11, then I start to panic because it's out of my routine. And I just started to realize that I have become really unhealthy again. And I thought that I've been super healthy, because the ways that I've myopically pushed myself to be more disciplined and be more like hard-edged about what I accept and what I don't accept has admittedly made my life feel really high performance. I work out really hard in the gym because I'm fueling myself in a consistent way. So my energy balance is the same and like all of this stuff, whatever. But it means that as little bumps in the road have popped up, I can't handle the bumps because I'm pushing myself at redline in every one of these categories. I don't want to have brunch with my friends. I don't want to go out to eat with them. I don't want to do anything that negatively influences my perception of how my day or my life is going to go. So there's so much resistance and tension and all of these other things that should be bringing me joy. But the only reason they're not bringing me joy is because I'm not allowing the joy to come in. I'm making myself unhappy. And I looked around and I was like, I cannot believe I did this again. And here's the hilarious part about the tattoo, because it's again, like, it's so weird because I got it thinking or recognizing there's no way to win. And yet here I am looking around at how I've fallen back into the ego trap cycle once more. And I'm upset at myself because I'm like, I've been through this. I've gone to therapy. I've healed this. I thought I healed this. I thought I learned how to accept my inner child. I thought I learned how to not punish myself by renouncing everything and denying myself certain pleasures and joys in life. And I did it again. And then I'm mad at myself that I did it again. But yet I got the tattoo to recognize that this is just how life goes. And there's no beating the ego. There's no beating the cycle. There's no out-trumping myself. There's no out-muscling the ego. There's no out-winning myself. This is literally me versus me. When am I going to learn to not separate myself into these subcategories that are all trying to outbest each other? We're all fighting for the same goal. Happiness, joy, love, whatever that should be, or that's what we should be doing, right? I should be in alignment with myself. and with my friends and my hobbies and my peers. These things should be bringing me joy, not tension, not stress. So something needs to change. The real kicker for me, it started to percolate a few weeks ago because I'm in a section of my memoir now. Oh, we didn't even talk about that yet, but I'm in a section of my memoir now. I just write these stories kind of as they come to me. It's very, go with the flow, whatever. But I started to write about how the sexual trauma and body trauma and hypervigilance and all of this stuff that I experienced as a kid made me feel like I need to hyper control my world. It led me into these alleyways where I felt like the more I limited my life, the closer I pulled everything toward me, the less expansive I lived, the more contractionary I became, the safer I felt. And that's all that I knew how to do. And it started to percolate for me that something was off, if I'm being honest with myself, 2 or 3 weeks ago when I started writing that story. Because I was trying to write it from a perspective of this is how I used to be and I'm not like this anymore. Subconsciously, the tonality of the way that I was presenting this story was, I did this when I was a kid. I did this when I was in high school. I did this when I was in college. And I was trying to write it from a perspective that's like, these are the historical things that I used to do, that I used to struggle with. Past tense, as in no longer struggle with. But I'm writing this while I'm looking around and realizing, well, I eat one of 2 things for breakfast. I eat basically the same thing every single night for dinner. I only eat twice a day. I won't have a snack if I'm hungry because I'm like, well, this is out of alignment with what we usually do. I've done the same workout for the last 4 or 5 months. I have the same demands. You have to write for an hour, do it after work. I just started to realize I'm writing a story about how I used to be so compulsive and controlling and how I only knew how to feel safe in the world if I limited my world. It's not something that I'm literally doing right now as a 25-year-old writing this story. And the cognitive dissonance that created inside of me was triggering. It sent off an alert. It made writing, admittedly, the last couple of weeks really difficult. And I think I knew if I was able to be honest with myself in that moment and detach and look around and breathe and recognize yeah, I'm actually doing this again right now, then I probably would have had a different outcome, or I wouldn't have been burrowing myself into that story day in and day out and felt so weird. But that trigger, that feeling of I'm writing about a story as if it's not me anymore. And I'm walking around the world when I'd catch up with my friends. They're like, how are you? I'd tell them the same story. Yeah, everything's good. Nothing's really changed. I'm just writing in my book. It's going well. But I don't feel like it's going well because deep down, I understand that I'm lying. I'm not telling the whole truth. And that's something that has made me feel off for the last few weeks. But there's no other update. I don't want to talk to somebody about the details of my memoir because I want to keep it private and I want to keep it in my head. And I don't want to create a lot of attention or buzz around this thing. But I started to do that because I felt like the story wasn't going great. And so I tell people I'm writing a book, and it's kind of like pulling in that impression, ooh, you're writing a book? Yeah, I started to kind of siphon off of that feeling because I didn't have that internal purpose of feeling like I was writing well or writing the truth or telling the whole truth. And I started to, just recognize that I was lying to myself a little bit. Or I didn't necessarily recognize that back then. I see it now, but that's what's been happening for the last few weeks that I've been sitting down to write is I'm not telling the truth, or I'm acting like it's not me. I'm speaking as if there's this pedestal that I'm now achieved, this used to be me, this isn't me anymore, but in reality it is still me, and it might always be me. And so maybe the story that I have to tell isn't, this redemption arc of how I've healed everything, but learning how to bake into this memoir a feeling of, I went through a lot of tough stuff and there's a lot of old wounds in there that will always be my wounds. There's no abandoning the wounds. There's no banishing them to a corner. And the second you start to feel like I'm good, that's not me anymore, that's really when you just start to be dealing with an enlightened ego, which I think is where I've been for the last couple of months, if I'm being honest with myself. And it's just been a lot. I really feel like everything's kind of falling apart. So where does that lead us now? Well, what else have I not told you? It's now officially been 6 days since I've touched my memoir because I'm having a massive emotional release right now. I'm allowing myself to fall apart. I'm allowing myself to fragment because I need to figure out what has been not healthy for me and healthy for me. Admittedly, I probably could have gone back to the gym today, but I'm taking time off until I can go back to the gym and feel like I'm pursuing the gym in a healthy way. I don't want to start writing in my memoir today because I'm afraid that I'm just not going to tell the truth. And I need to use the energy that my life has right now to let whatever emotional process is happening within me out and move that. And that's hard because every day now I'm starting to feel like, dude, you said you'd write an hour a day and it's been 6 days. Like, I'm just beating myself and I'm trying to push that voice away and recognize like, God, I have so many mental health issues. I'll always have mental health issues, you know? Maybe a normal, healthy person could write an autobiography. Admittedly, they probably wouldn't want to write an autobiography, but maybe they can just sit and write stories and push themselves and go hard and be fine. But I can't. I can't ever let anything become more important to me than my health. And so that sucks that I'm not writing right now, but I'm not writing right now for the right reason. And I have doubt. I'm like, okay, but like, could I really sit with it today? And I think I can't. And then I'm just making excuses, but it's tough. You see, that this is what happens with my brain. This is what you don't see when I sit down and make a video that's like how I overcame my childhood trauma. Because I still deal with this kind of stuff, you know? This is the inner workings of my brain. So yeah, no memoir right now. Taking a hard time off the gym. The last 3 or 4 days, I have not cooked. I can't remember the last time I didn't cook. Meals to bring to work, dinner. I've eaten takeout. I had Thai food with my friends on Saturday. That was amazing. I had some cookies. A couple of days ago, I had Five Guys. Haven't had Five Guys since I graduated college in 2019. That was really yummy. Last night I had Chick-fil-A. Tonight I'm having dinner with friends and I'm having Indian food. Like, I'm just letting myself do a full reset. I'm calm. I'm just sitting. I'm meditating a lot. That's a big thing for me right now. It's just like I wake up 7, sleep in. I've been sleeping like 8 or 9 hours a night, which is crazy to me. Lower caffeine, obviously, because I'm not like going to the gym and training and like taking, pre-workout before I go to the gym. But the big goal this week, indefinitely, honestly, is like no writing in the memoir right now, no gym, no unnecessary pushing in any category, eat takeout, do whatever my heart desires, and meditate. And just sitting in the meditations, honestly, in the morning and at night have been so clarifying for me because I don't necessarily have like answers that are coming to me right now, but I'm letting my life, like in my mind's eye, it feels like I'm just being blown apart. And when I sit down to meditate, that like those fragments are just kind of paused in thin air. And as I sit down and I close my eyes and I sit for 20, 30 minutes, which side note is also crazy to me. Like when I sit down to meditate now, it's been like 20, 30 minutes, no problem. After not meditating for like 9 months, I'm just like, this is good. But I'm just letting myself kind of pick apart these fragments and figure out what's there, what's that. And my goal is to just figure out objectively, evaluate my life, understand what I've been doing, what systems I've been pushing at redline, and ultimately figuring out what needs to give, because something needs to give. Probably multiple things need to give. I've started to ask myself now, what makes me happy? I feel like I lost touch with really what makes me happy. I've been diving headfirst in this purpose engine, but that's siphoned a lot of joy out of my life without me even necessarily realizing it. I'm trying to optimize every area of my life so that I can sit down and have a good hour to write, but it's like The joy of writing has been pulled away from me a little bit. So it's been feeling a little bit more like my schedule is a punishment than a joy. So I need to just get clarity, or again, around what brings me happiness. Why do I feel like I'm here? What am I really trying to do? What is going to make my days feel full of love and light again? And giving myself the space to contemplate that and to explore that creatively, lightly, non-judgmentally. And if that means that I'm not in the gym for the next week or week and a half because I don't have the time to push that, or if I feel like, going back and crushing a hard bench workout is just going to be like a distractor to the work that I really need to be doing right now, which is sitting with myself and loving on myself tenderly and not physically pushing. Whatever that is, I just need to give that to myself this week. And my goal is to come out of this period of healing this tattoo, of reordering myself, of realigning myself into a direction that serves me again, that fills me again, that allows me to love on myself again, and brings light and life and joy back into me again. Because I deserve that feeling. And I'll be honest with you, just eating more and removing the rules and the guardrails around my life has filled me up again, even though I'm really confused. And admitting to myself, being honest with myself about what I'm struggling with has really broken me open. I am falling apart, but I think I'm falling into something else. Something better. And as long as I can sit with myself and allow that process to unfold and to hold space for that and to just take the pressure off myself, I think it's going to be okay. I know it's going to be okay. And I've been honest. I've told my friends something feels off. I don't know what it is. I think I'm burning out. I'm not sure. And just holding space for that and allowing myself to be confused is what's allowing me to be here right now and to just be totally in this jam. And I think it'll all be okay. The only other thing that I didn't mention, which I think is crazy, is like when you get so myopically focused on being so driven and like go hard and like work out hard and write and everything like that, like I've been in this flow that's super disciplined, super focused, super intense. And it was so funny to me, like, when I got Five Guys a couple nights ago, it was like, I never do this. I never get takeout for dinner. I would never have, like, a greasy burger and fries for dinner either. But I just left work, came home, drove myself to Five Guys, and, like, am in the car, and I'm like, I felt myself consciously, like, pull out of this channel, this flow, this line of living life into this one. Like, less pressure, less whatever. And I was like, damn, really? No one gives a shit. It's like, no one could care less what track you're in. I don't care about the people who are living their life on that line, and I don't care about the people living their life on that line. It is literally just our own perception of our lives. And we apply so much judgment to what we do for who? That's what happened. I like laughed to myself. I was like, there's literally like getting Five Guys is like no factor. But like a few weeks ago, I would have had a meltdown, like an aneurysm if my friend suggested like we go to Five Guys for dinner. Like I probably would have had an anxiety attack because I'm like, that's not me. I don't do that. Like so much pressure, so much shame. I was like, wow. No one cares. You just got to figure out what makes you happy and do that. That's literally the only goal. And it brings me right back to the tattoo because I had clarity around what gives me happiness and purpose and drive and joy and love 6 months ago and maybe even 3 months ago. And just like that, it's not in alignment anymore. And this is why we always have to go back and do the work. And this is why I have the tattoo. So that's a lot, but this is where I am right now. I love you. Thank you so much for being here for me. You're awesome. Now that if you made it to the end of this video, I'm going to show you this tattoo. Here we go. That's it. That's my ouroboros. That's her right there. Figure out how to just live the cycle and stop thinking that I can win it. I love you. I'll talk to you next week. We'll see where I am when that happens. Goodbye.